Hello and welcome to another video. In today's video we are continuing work on our Cub Cadet original. Now in the last video on this tractor we optimistically thought that we might be able to just tinker with the engine and get it to run. However, that was not the case, so we're going to have to go a bit more in depth today. We've ordered some parts and those have arrived now. So today we will be taking the engine out and seeing how far we get. So we're going to start with the hitch because, as well as being able to tip the tractor up on end as we were saying before, this actually allows us to lift our workbench because, as you can see, the only way this tractor fits on the table is with the hitch through the handle that we have on the workbench here, which means you can't actually jack it up that far. We're not fully sure how we actually managed to get this on the table now because the table isn't long enough to push it forwards to clear the handlebars that we have on here, and pushing it back doesn't help either. So I'm not fully sure how we managed that one, and this is hard enough to lift as it is, which is why we've taken the wheel weights permanently off and they just sit underneath it while we're working on it. But to take this off, we're going to start with disconnecting this lift bar here because we can actually take the tension off of that. And in theory, once we've done that, we can move this about as much or as little as we want. We're not fully sure how much of this we're going to be able to successfully take off. I mean, ideally, we'll just disconnect that, take the two bolts out of this top cast part, take the two bolts off the bottom, disconnect the springs, and the whole lot comes off. When it comes to disconnecting the springs, we've already tried one of these bolts and it's seized, and we don't want to be snapping bolts today, seeing as this isn't actually our main focus on this tractor. So hopefully we'll be able to just take the tension off and lift them off this end, which this bar they're actually on isn't mounted on there, it's just sat on there. So not fully sure the reason for that, but I'm sure that won't go as easily as how I've just described it. So we're going to try to do this off camera just so that we can we're being as careful as possible with some of these bolts and everything, and we'll come back to you in a little while, hopefully with this all off. So a short while later now, and we have the hitch off. That probably took just about as much time as we just spent staring at the sky outside, looking at the few hundred geese that just went over. It was actually much easier than we expected with this. Just a bit of releasing agent on the bolts we needed to come undone here, and they did. Some of them put up a bit of a struggle, but nothing snapped, so we are happy. And with the amount of solid metal on this thing is pretty heavy, probably the same weight as one of those wheel weights. And the construction of this is a bit odd. You can see where these bars come through and they've been welded there. We're still not certain who these hitches would have been commissioned by, because in the Cub Cadet manual it does list that you can have auto-colto attachments on the back of these Cub Cadets, and those required this adapter here. And we've seen another Cub Cadet in this country owned by a friend of ours who has one of these hitches on his Cub Cadet as well. That's the only other one that we've seen. So if there was only one of them, you'd think that it was maybe homemade or something, but the fact that it's featured in the manual and the fact there's another one that looks very similar makes you think that maybe it was commissioned by the importer or by Cub Cadet just for models that were coming over here, because I'm not sure how much auto-colto stuff got shipped over to America, with that being a British-made brand. And we noticed a couple of things, including the nail used through there instead of a pin to hold this bar into this cast part, and that is also seized as you'd expect with the amount of rust around this area. So we'll put some releasing agent on that as well, in the hope that eventually that will come unstuck as well. But we're happy that we managed to get all of that off as one pretty much. And now looking at the back of the tractor, much more space around this whole area. We can actually move it back as well, which is handy. Looks just like our other Cub Cadets now. So we will move to the front end with a bit of repositioning and start taking bits off that end as well. So we've now turned the tractor around and jacked it up now that we can without the hitch on there. And as you can see, we've already removed the bonnet, which is just 2 bolts, one either side on the grille, and lifted that off. Next, we're going to take the grille itself off. As we said before, this in theory isn't essential for taking the engine out, but it just gives us more space, especially if we're going to tip this up on end to do that oil seal. But this is held off by 4 bolts under here, and one of which is the incorrect bolt. You can see it's way longer and it's got a screw head on the top of it, so that'll need to get changed for a proper one at some point. I'll probably get my cameraman's help with this, so I'll start on this corner here. And just whip those off. I'll just stack the nuts in there. It's not going to work actually. There we are. Don't have a screwdriver to hand either to get that out. Oh, there we are. Here we are, and that's that off. Now just the last one here. There's no one's on there.
Yeah, hang on a second, I'm just struggling to see. Right, okay.
There we are. Finally off that bolt. Right, so in theory, that is everything off there. Okay, that's not actually as heavy as I thought it was. Especially when you compare that to like all the hitch parts and everything. But that is the grille detached. So a short while later now, and we've ordered some new bolts for the grille mounting. So they'll all be the same length now, and we struggled to actually find any that were 1.125" long in 1/4 in the UK, we can only really get 1 inch or 1.25", not 1.125". So we've gone for 1.25". We can always cut them down a little bit to make them the right size, but at least they'll all be the same size now. And when it comes to finding Cub Cadet parts, it might take us a little while for some of these things because we haven't actually worked on one of these before. Another example of that is the drive belt, which we've now realised needs replacing, because as you can see there are plenty of big cracks in the belts here. So that has had it really. So we've been trying to find a standard size belt that works for this, which we think we've found now, and we've got one of those on order. We'll see whether it's right when it turns up. And the next thing we want to do is actually try to take the head bolts off with the engine still mounted to the chassis, because, well, in particular the one by the exhaust port, but these do look like they're going to be quite difficult to get off, unfortunately. And we rather have a go at them when they're attached to the tractor and we know how much force we're putting into them, rather than when the engine's out and then you can't really hold it still, and as such you don't know how much force you're putting through them either. So we're going to take off some of the stuff around the engine, like the fuel tank, cowling, carburetor stuff. You've seen us take off this already, so we won't video that, but that's just to get some of those bits out of the way so that we can start to undo some of these head bolts, hopefully. And we're hoping all of those come undone easy enough, no snapping. And then once we've confirmed whether that's going to happen or not, we can then take off the recoil pull starter and then try and get the belt off and go from there, because this still needs to come out to pull the flywheel off and get to the coil behind it. But for now, we'll take those bits off and come back to you. So when we took that fuel tank bracket off the top, some of the other cowling pretty much fell off with it, so we've kept those bits off now, and that's given us access to the head bolts, which we've already soaked in releasing agent a couple of times. I'm just going to give each of them a bit of a tap. Not sure if this is actually going to do anything or not, but it's just to send some vibrations down them, maybe help us free them up a bit, or to maybe help the releasing agent out. Not a clue if that actually helps or not, but we will see. And while we're letting that soak in, we can try to take this part of the recoil pull start off by undoing all of these nuts and hoping these bolts are somewhat, in some way, held in place. Otherwise, this is going to get very difficult. So I must admit, we've already tried these off camera because of how much more difficult this would get if the bolts turn as well as the nuts, which I think the kind of scorch marks on the paint there should be a good indicator that these bolts have been welded onto the back of the cowling. The annoying thing is we're currently using an M10, or sorry, a 10mm socket, and that means these are metric nuts and bolts, which obviously we don't like mixing metric with imperial, but someone has on here. Now in future we may well replace this bit of cowling or fix it with the proper kind of stationary nuts, or maybe just cut these down a bit so they're less obvious as to what's happened to this. But we'll just undo all of these and then hopefully we should be able to pull this front part off. So that's all of the nuts off. Now we get to find out whether this is going to come off easily, or if it's going to hit something, or if all the ball bearings or anything are going to fall apart. We'll see.
Is there enough space?
No, it's that, see that tiny little thing in the middle?
Yeah.
That's, oh, never mind, I might have got it around it. Just about. No, I don't think it's going to be enough space.
What's stopping it?
It's now stuck on, oh, give us a minute. Might be, no. I can't actually tell what it's stuck on now. It's stuck on this centre part, but I seem to have got it wedged, which is unhelpful. Yes, it's kind of stuck there. It needs more space that way, really.
Okay, so I might have to wait until we take the engine off.
Yeah, but nothing fell out, so that's good. So a bit more juggling, and that recoil came out in the end. It was all quite fiddly, but as we say, it is out, so that's quite helpful. Now the rest of this will have to wait until the engine's out and we can take the flywheel nut off to take the rest of that off. But now I think we can't put it off any longer. We're going to have to take these head bolts out, and we're just going to be using a small breaker bar here just to get the most feel for what is going on. It's only about a foot long, so not too much leverage on it, and we're not using a ratchet or anything like that, or a mega long one. So don't mind if I take my time here, but we're hoping for 7 whole head bolts, which that turns quite nicely. Move on to the next one. Okay, that's turning too. It was a bit tighter than the first one. That was not too tight. There we are. Going well so far, but we're not around to the exhaust manifold one yet, so we'll see how that goes. That one turns as well. That one's good too. Now this one, not a problem either. So from what you can see so far, they've all come unstuck. Now we just need to pull these all the way out and see whether we've got whole head bolts or whether someone snapped them in the past. But hopefully that should be all good. Now just using the ratchet to loosen these off until they feel pretty much hand tightness. And if any of these feel stiff at any point, then we can go backwards and forwards. These first two feel nice and clean. I mean, we know this engine's been apart relatively recently as far as these engines go, so this is a good sign. I mean, as you can see, all of these are turning really easily. I'm having to hold the extension there to stop it turning back on itself, so it must be very clean threads.
We don't know if the head has been taken off before, do we?
No, the only pictures we've seen are some other engine work, of some other engine work, I should say. However, if we just loosen these off and then pull them out, that looks whole to me, don't you think?
It's pretty good.
So that's good. That's the one that we thought would be the issue. So I'll just go around these and we'll have a quick assessment of how they look. Bit more. That one's all good. It's what we like to see. That one's whole as well. And not just whole, these actually look quite clean bolts as well, so that's good. That one looks fine as well, don't you think?
Yeah, oh, they look pretty good. Normally this one's a problem because the thread goes right the way through to the exhaust port.
It's good too. It's maybe sounding a bit repetitive, but I'm more than happy for it to be repetitive when it's good news like this. Yeah, that one's just the same. Yeah, and that one's good too. So 7 head bolts that all came undone pretty easily. And they're all nice and clean and unsnapped. So we'll just see if we can unstick the head here, maybe.
Yeah.
I don't know. Are you trying to pop it off with the compression?
Yeah, just turning the engine over. See if that will pop it. Yeah.
Well, I can smell where the air's come out, but I can't lift it up at the moment. So we've just given it a gentle tap, and that seems to have freed it off a bit. So we'll see what lies underneath. Try to. Well, it looks like it's got a relatively recent head gasket, I'd like to say.
It does, doesn't it?
Yeah, there's one bit of that that's very shiny. And standard piston by the looks of it, by the markings. There's quite a few scratches on there though, on the top.
Yeah.
Which are odd. If I hold the head bolts in place here, we can have a look at the head. Oh, that's because part of the gasket's actually come off there, that's why it's shiny. So I need a new head gasket on there, but obviously you're meant to put one of those on when you take the head off anyway, so we'll be doing that. But overall, that looks like it's been cleaned recently to me. So we've just sat the head back on there now to keep the muck out of it. Looks like the engine's had some head work done to it before, and they almost look like new valves as well, so we'll have to do some investigation there as to why we thought the valve gaps were so far out and whether they are or not. And then obviously we'll put our new valves on and everything like that. But the next thing we're going to do is undo the engine bolts, which 4 of them, they look pretty new. And something else that's handy is they appear to be captive nuts if we look under the chassis there, which is helpful. So you only have to worry about one thing. And then once they're all undone, we can tip the engine up and whack the belt off. It'll be much easier to do it that way. So I'll just quickly whip these off. So with the bolts out, I'm now going to tip this up, and my cameraman will hook that belt off of there. If you can.
I'll try.
There we go, that's off there. So we don't currently have a place for this to go, but in theory we can just spin this around, at least for now. There we go. Gives us a bit more room while we have a bit of a move about. So we've had a pretty major move around now, and the only thing on this bench is the engine. And as you can see, we've already taken the flywheel nuts off, which removed this whole recoil starter cup at the same time that the belt goes onto. So the last thing we need to do here really is just take off this bit of engine cowling, and then we can put a puller on the flywheel and take that off and see what lies behind it, because that should hopefully give us some answers to why this ignition system is not working. So that's the cowling off, and actually there you can see the bolts all welded on there. So that is exactly how that's worked. Got a bit of cleaning up to do in there, but not too much. Now we just need to get our pullers out. So we have a puller on there now, and we will see how easy this is going to be to come off. I have just noticed something, which is around that area there looks to be some copper coloured stuff, which may well be copper slip. If it is, then in theory this should come off quite easily. There we are. That came off very easily. And that actually looks like, I would say, looks like a pretty new coil and condenser there, which doesn't really help us in diagnosing what the issue is. So we've been having a bit of a poke around and done some testing, and this is what we've found. So first off, the screw on the condenser was loose, so these connections were loose on there, so we tightened that up a bit. Then we found that this earth connection here was loose as well, so we tightened that one up also. Then we were trying to do some ohm meter testing as we did before, when everything was still all together, to see if that made a difference. It didn't, and in fact we were actually getting zero kind of connection through everything. And we found that this what's this called,
Plug cap, maybe?
Plug cap, something like that. This was not actually getting any connection through it, and we thought that'll be an easy fix, so we just shoved a connector in the end there to test it, and we got a new ohm meter reading of 3.49 kilo ohms between the coil and the earth, and we tested that through the HT lead, and we also completely cut the HT lead out by peeling back some of the tape and went straight from the lobe on the coil to an earth, and we got the same reading. Now, from what we read online before, it's meant to be between 7 and 10 kilo ohms, so quite a bit below those values, which we'll obviously do some more searching to make sure they are, all that information that we got is correct. But that still points towards the coil being faulty. Something else I forgot to mention earlier, there's a chunk out of the magnet ring there, which looks like it was done by someone winding in a bolt all the way through and too far into the magnet ring here, which, seeing as that's got rust on it, don't think that was us. And also with it having rust on it, looks like it was done quite a while ago, and therefore it's been functional since then, or at least we hope. So we think that still points towards this coil needing to be replaced with our new one, which is a shame because I think this is still quite a new coil. But we will switch that at some point, or some point soon, to see if that has an effect. However, we are going to have to leave this video here because it's taken us quite a while to get to this point, especially when we've been doing move arounds. because we haven't actually shown you where all the parts went, which is there. And this tractor is not an easy one to move about, especially when you take out all of the weight out of the front end when it was already drooping on the back when we lifted it before. So yeah, that was quite difficult to move across to there. But we'll have to pick this up in the next video, and it does no harm to spend a bit of time away from this so we can think a bit more about possible solutions or anything that could be going wrong on here. But that is it for this video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.